Apologetics. That's the term for the practice of making the case that the claims of Christianity are logical and trustworthy. For example, arguing that God exists and that what the New Testament says is true. Practitioners of apologetics are known as Christian apologists. One famous Christian apologist was Ravi Zacharias. In the world of evangelical Christianity, Ravi Zacharias was a global celebrity. He was a cleric in the denomination the Christian and Missionary Alliance. He founded a multinational Christian apologetics organization called Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. He wrote over 30 books. He hosted 2 internationally syndicated radio programs. When he died in 2020, the then American Vice President Mike Pence delivered a eulogy at a memorial to him. However, Ravi Zacharias' reputation has now been shattered. It is now accepted that Ravi Zacharias lied about his academic credentials and that he was a sexual predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Steve? It's Steve Baughman, if I remember correctly.
It's actually pronounced Baughman, like Boffman, Baughman, like Kaufman, but with a B.
Okay, yeah. Now, I've interviewed us before, because this idea was originally going to be a documentary film, but then I later thought maybe a podcast would be a better idea because it would be easy to make, easy to distribute, that kind of thing. Now, Clark and I met at film school.
Yes.
And Gia and I met, or Kayleen and I, whatever name I go with, met over Facebook, actually. So that's how we got to know each other. So start out, Steve Baughman, you identify as an atheist, but you're not actually opposed to religion, if I remember correctly. Am I correct there? You're not like Richard Dawkins is or Christopher Hitchens was. Your Twitter handle is Banjo Playing Atheist, but you're not actually opposed to religion.
Right. I don't believe in a God, but I don't have a problem with people pursuing whatever spiritual path they want. I have a problem with people being vicious and imposing their religion on others and passing laws that are violative of other people's rights. So yes, religion per se, I think it's all wrong, but I think there's a place for it. I love participating in Christian rituals. I go to church on Christmas Eve, and I love Christmas music, and I record gospel music in my other career, and spirituality is fine with me. I don't like viciousness, and I don't like stupidity. And there's a lot of that in religion, as there is in atheism. There's plenty of stupid and vicious atheists also, as you all know. So.
Yeah. Well, personally, I don't like people shoving religion down my throat, but I don't like atheists shoving their atheism down my throat either. I mean, I feel like when I'm being preached at either way, it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As long as you feel like you have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't approve of atheists saying that you have to be stupid to believe in God. I mean, I've studied for 15 years now, or since college. I've studied with some very, very brilliant theists, polished scholars who believe that there's a God, and I think they're wrong, but I certainly don't think that they're stupid or brainwashed for believing what they believe. I think they're wrong, but it bothers me when atheists sort of broad brush all theism as a form of stupidity, because I just don't think it is. There's some brilliant theists out there. So
no.
So I'll never be a popular atheist because I'm not anti-religion enough. Yeah. I just don't believe it.
When did you first become aware of this person named Ravi Zacharias?
My interest in Christian philosophy and philosophy of religion and Christian apologetics got me in 2015, led me to this guy named Ravi Zacharias, who struck me as extremely bright. He had doctorates, as I then believed, from Cambridge and Oxford and academic posts at these very, very prestigious universities. And he spoke with such eloquence. And I was quite taken with him when I discovered him in the first half of 2015. to the point even of reconsidering my atheist worldview, because he made such a powerful argument in favor of God's existence. And that lasted a few days, and then I started looking into him and found that this guy's a fraud. This guy it was more than a few days. It was a short while. I discovered that his doctorates are nonsense. He has no academic positions anywhere. And also that his claim to have studied quantum physics at Cambridge was sheer and utter nonsense. It was just blatantly false. The most Ravi Zacharias had was a professional Master of Divinities degree, and he had held a associate professorship, I believe it was, at a almost unheard of seminary, Christian seminary, for a short period of time. He was a very unremarkable intellect masquerading as a world-class scholar from Oxford and Cambridge.
Wow.
Well, the interesting thing about that was, it wasn't that he was lying so much, it was that the colleagues who he worked with could easily have known that he was lying, and some of them must have known that he was lying, because they had real Cambridge and Oxford positions. And when Ravi Zacharias traveled around the world saying, I'm Cambridge educated, I studied physics with John Polkinghorne at Cambridge, they knew that that wasn't true. And yet not a single person amongst those Christian apologists who claim to follow a Lord who demands truthfulness from them, not a single one of them had the guts to speak out against Ravi's extraordinarily bold, brazen, and transparently false claims that he was making about himself. And that's the real story here, is how the Christian world knew that Ravi Zacharias was lying, and they chose to keep their mouths shut.
Why? Why do you think they did that? Do you know? Why do you think they?
Yeah, I think it's just the business model requires that Ravi, the figurehead, the head of this organization, he's got to be kept pure and saint-like, because if his reputation gets tarnished, the whole multinational enterprise goes down, and they all lose their jobs.
But they knew from the start, correct? Did they know from the start? But did they know from the start?
No, I don't think there are many of them who joined Ravi Zacharias International Ministry knowing that he was a liar. But I know that there was grumbling in-house about Ravi's credentials, that people were concerned about it before I came on board and started making it public. So there was some discussion about Ravi Zacharias ain't too clean on those credential claims, folks. And there was grumbling, there was worry, but nobody did anything about it.
Yeah. He claims to have won when he's dead now, he claimed to have won a very prestigious preaching contest back in India, but he won the contest, but he exaggerated the nature of the contest. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Ravi claimed in his autobiography and in some of his published writings that he won what he describes as an international preaching contest in India. I think the year was 1963. He describes people coming from all over Asia to enter this preaching contest. And it's called the Asian Youth Preacher Award. And I Googled the term Asian Youth Preacher Award, and I found that the only place this thing ever shows up is in connection with Ravi Zacharias. It's something he totally made up. And it was a competition. It turns out there was an India-only competition. And I contacted all three judges who Ravi mentioned in his book. And I asked them, and all three of them confirmed that this was an India-only competition. It wasn't international. And one of them described it as a little preaching contest. So, here we are hearing this directly from the judges, something that's radically different from this dramatic international event that Ravi described.
Yeah.
So pretty much pretty much almost everything Ravi said about his academic and intellectual achievements was false.
That's yeah, that's crazy how like some people, and yeah, it's kind of like mostly I guess like sociopaths and stuff just have the ability to just tell people things that aren't true and they will believe it. And especially when you get sort of so rich and powerful and influential and confident, you know, like he's probably just such a charismatic person that, you know, he tells people these falsities and yeah, people just believe it because they trust him. Like they're just able to like, oh, this guy's really confident. This guy's really charismatic and like influential. Like, yeah. And yeah, and that was a really good question Gia asked. Like, why did like other people in the Christian church know that his stuff was false, but didn't speak up? And yeah, I guess that's just to do with they want to hold their power, I suppose,
or hold their jobs. You know, those when you get a PhD in theology or something, there's not a big job market for you. Whereas, so if you can wind up with a cushy speaking job for an international apologetics organization where you travel the world and you're treated as a hero, that's a really nice gig to have. And who wants to screw that up by pointing out that the leader has some character problems?
Yeah. They were comfortable.
They also understood within
financially.
It can be financially devastating. And they also knew at RZIM that if you criticized Ravi, you would be sent to Siberia, that you would be, it was very bad for your career to even raise concerns about Ravi's integrity. Yeah. I had one person, of all the people I spoke to at RZIM after the truth came out, several of them contacted me, and quite a few of them actually, and apologized for not believing me sooner. Only one of them actually came out and said, Steve, one of the reasons I kept my head in the sand and my mouth shut about Ravi was that I was concerned about my mortgage payments. So I really appreciated that person's honesty. The rest spoke of how Ravi had just fooled them. And I have a real problem with that, because it wasn't that hard to see that Ravi never went to Cambridge. He was never enrolled at Cambridge. He was never a professor at Oxford. He never had any academic title at Oxford. It was all utter bullshit. And it wasn't that hard to see. So for people to now be claiming, oh, we were just so fooled, just strikes me as a little disingenuous.
Yeah. I mean, you see that kind of thing even just in real life, like people you know and people you've met, where people will, tell people just kind of lies, or maybe not even necessarily lies, but they'll give a reason. I mean, I guess that's still lying, but they'll give a reason as to why, like say at work, like, why didn't you do this? And they'll be able to explain really persuasively and convincingly well, you know, and people just believe it. People just eat it up because they have that confidence and charisma, even though what they're saying is total bullshit.
Well, I will, exactly along that point, I will also say that the folks from Ravi's ministry who I've had extensive conversations with afterwards, very fine people, very concerned about integrity. And that makes it all the more scary. These aren't folks who are just pathological liars. These are folks who got co-opted by a charismatic figure and a cushy job that allowed them honor. They were co-opted by that. And that scares me a lot, that when good people can get co-opted by that, that worries. That's a worrisome thing. So
it's really worrying. Like when you're financially secure, you have a good job, you're led by a really influential figure that you trust. You don't want to leave that. You never want to leave that behind, even if you know that he's done terrible things or that he's kind of really fraudulent.
Talk about his Cambridge claims.
You can see multiple videos on YouTube of Ravi speaking about how he was studied at Cambridge, and his book jackets, he refers to himself as Cambridge educated. And Cambridge appears all over his promotional materials. It turns out, and that was one of the things that truly impressed me about him, and thought, wow, this guy's studied quantum physics at Cambridge. When he speaks about the second law of thermodynamics, he's got the qualifications to do that. It turns out that Ravi spent between 2 and 3 months on a sabbatical at a place called Ridley Hall, which is not a part of the University of Cambridge. It's an Anglican training seminary for their people. And Ravi went there for 2 to 3 months, and while he was there, he popped on over to the university and sat in on a few lectures. Okay, that's it. And he didn't enroll in any courses. He didn't enroll at the university. He sat in on some lectures, and he built that into the claim that he is Cambridge educated and that I studied under quantum physicists at Cambridge. It was just an astonishing lie that everyone who'd known Ravi then would have known was a lie.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything again.
Yeah, sitting in on a few lectures isn't the same as, like, you know, doing the study, doing the work, doing the assignment, committing yourself. It's just like, yeah, I'll get a taste and I'll just tell people that I know it all.
Yeah. Or calling yourself Cambridge educated because you watched a few lectures there. But that's the level of deception that Ravi was willing to go to in promoting himself.
His Oxford claims. Can you talk about them?
Yeah, he claimed to be his website. I went back on the Wayback Machine and noticed him claiming to be a professor at Oxford, and a video of him telling a fundraising group, I'm now a professor at Oxford, and his books refer to him having official titles at Oxford. I contacted the university, and they were very clear that he's never been on their payroll. He's never had a teaching position at the University of Oxford. It was all 100% bullshit. He had started a teaching ministry, an apologetics institute in conjunction with Oxford. And because he was the co-founder, he got to lecture there, but it wasn't an Oxford University institution. And he wasn't on the Oxford University payroll. He had absolutely no teaching positions at Oxford. But here we see once again him taking something that's a very, very modest connection with the university and turning it into a really big deal. And by the way, Ravi eventually, after fighting my claims for a long time, in the second half of 2018, formally admitted that he'd never been a professor at Oxford and that he'd never enrolled at Cambridge. Now, he did this in a very, very quiet way, in a way that was designed to reach the fewest number of people, but he at least got to apologize and say, look, I apologize if anyone asked him about it. But he did it. He didn't do it in a loud way at all. He did it in a very quiet way. So it's no longer controversial. What I'm saying about Ravi's nonsensical Cambridge and Oxford claims, that's now established fact.
No. You mentioned in your book that he claimed to study quantum physics under, I think it was John Polkinghorne, but John Polkinghorne wasn't teaching quantum physics at the time when Ravi claimed to be studying it.
That's correct. What Ravi did was he, again, sat in on some lectures in a class on the religion and science dialogue that was taught by a guy who used to be a quantum physicist. And Ravi converted that into, I studied quantum physics at Cambridge. I mean, it's laughable.
That's a reach.
He got away with it. He got away with
reach.
it. I'm sorry?
That's a big reach.
It's a huge reach. You know, I remain astonished that he got away with it. And to this day, he'd still be getting away with it if the crazy internet atheist hadn't said, this smells funny, let me look into this. You know, I mean, think about it. Nobody called him on this stuff.
Mm.
He's used the title doctor. In one book I've got, I haven't read it, but a book I've got of his, the title, Dr. Ravi Zacharias is in the book jacket. He often referred to him as Dr. Ravi Zacharias. But you say he wasn't a doctor. He didn't have a PhD. He wasn't qualified to call himself doctor.
Yeah, so this is one of his least serious transgressions, and it's the one that he succeeded in getting the media to focus almost exclusively on. So if you have an honorary doctorate, technically you're not supposed to. If Asbury College gives you a doctorate, an honorary doctorate, you are technically only allowed to call yourself doctor at that university, and they'll call you doctor at that university. You don't suddenly broadcast yourself to the world as doctor. It's a limited thing that comes with honorary doctorates. And when you do call yourself doctor, you're supposed to put honorary in parentheses so everybody knows that. And Ravi wouldn't do that. Ravi's website was carefully worded so that you could not tell that his doctorates were only honorary. And it took me hours of searching before I realized that he doesn't have any academic doctorates. But he then claimed that he never wanted to be known as doctor, and it was his overeager fans who kept calling him doctor and this and that. But he had the Dr. Zacharias on his door, at his office door. And when I called his office, his secretary answered Dr. Zacharias's office. So he played up the doctor thing. He milked it. And when he got caught overdoing it, he lied about how he never really wanted it. I mean, this is one nasty, deceptive son of a bitch, I'm telling you. Ravi Zacharias was a horrible liar.
You sound pretty biased, though, in all of this. To be objective, you need to be a little unbiased. You do sound a little biased. You are,
well,
which is normal.
If I have any of my facts wrong, please let me know. But I'd have to say you'd be the first. The thing is, I think that the people in his ministry would agree with me completely on what I'm saying. They wouldn't call him a son of a bitch. They would call him a deceptive narcissist. But I don't think I'm exaggerating anything.
But there must be a positive reason behind it, There must be, if he has impressed so many people, there must be some kind of positive influence. So I'm just trying to recognize and acknowledge that for our audience, besides, or to him, but so
it's charismatic.
Charismatic, but also yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what is positive about saying you are a professor at Oxford when you're not? Or what's positive about calling yourself doctor and not disclosing that it's honorary? I mean, I just don't see anything positive about that except for Ravi.
Positive about the influence I'm talking. And I'm not saying about, people can say also, there are also doctors that are clueless and have made a lot of mistakes in their scientific research and in their, a lot of faulty people in the academic world that are very wrong, so while he did perform, he did do some good stuff to some people, I guess. And
I
with the
don't
influence.
know. I don't know if he did. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Because that's a very good question. And a lot of Ravi fans have urged me to look at the good things he did. And I have to say this: Ravi dumbed Christianity down. He dumbed Christian philosophy down to where it was like sound bites that got him applause lines, and that. So basically what Ravi was doing was instilling a false confidence in people in their religion.
Okay.
And I don't know, that he definitely made a lot of people feel good, feel more confident in their religion, but he did it by dumbing it down. And I just don't see anything good about making people feel good about something by dumbing it down, and something that I especially think is false. So I can't say that he did any good with his evangelism. Now, Ravi had some charity organizations that he did that apparently helped women who were victims of sexual trafficking. And it's really hard to find out anything about those. He talked about those organizations a lot, but I haven't been able to see what exactly they did. But I will grant that there may have been charity work that he was doing that is really hard to find out about. But
that's like direct.
I'm sorry?
That's direct help. That's only direct. It's something that you can see. I can see that you approve of only what you can see. I'm talking about a little subtle positive. What you're talking about is like a direct help.
Mhm.
I'm asking you about some, since you wrote a book about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking about a subtle influence, let's say. So for example, you're saying, I don't know what would be a good in lying people, right? But we lie to each other every day. We trick our minds into believing things that we want to believe in, right? You might believe that something is wrong, something is right. Well,
Mhm.
in Middle East, there's totally different kind of beliefs about that, for example. So yeah, I'm just saying that the charity work that we cannot even find proof of is something that you obviously directly can see, can talk about, while there are more subtle, because as I said, if you have such a big audience, like for example, right, if you have such a big audience, nobody can discredit you, even if you're lying, because you have so many people that love you. Now my question is, why is he loved? He must have been that what he gave the people there and then was needed there and then. So to that people.
He was charismatic. He was a very, very powerful speaker. He was very entertaining. When I had dinner with him, I was struck by how extraordinarily charming he was.
Yeah.
But I can't say, Kayleen, that I think he's giving anybody anything any more than cult leaders manipulating their followers into a false sense of security and belonging. Yes, they're giving the people something, but I don't think that's a good thing. And that's exactly what Ravi was doing. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be overly dogmatic about this, but I just don't see any good that Ravi Zacharias actually did for those who followed.
You don't think he was very good as an apologist, even though he was one of the most famous apologists. I believe you don't think he's actually that good an apologist.
I don't think any professional Christian philosophers think Ravi was a good apologist. Ravi was a good businessman. He dumbed the message down. He wrote good books. He had great one-liners. He really knew how to use the mic to make the atheists who would question him at his Q&As. Ravi controlled the mic and the agenda, and he could make people look stupid, and he always got the big applause lines, but he didn't encourage deep thinking about Christianity. His books are really written for 8th graders. So no, he was not a good apologist. He wasn't a scholar. He didn't have original ideas. He was a good speaker. He was a good cult leader.
Dare I say it, he sounds a bit Donald Trump.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Almost like an articulate Donald Trump, maybe. Yeah.
I'll probably stay away from that one, but yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you.
So now we get this. Okay, we'll talk about his academic credentials or lack of academic credentials. Talk about Lorianne Thompson. What happened there? This was a cyber affair, but it's actually illegal in certain places for a cleric to get into sexual relations with someone they're supposed to be part of their flock, because there's a power imbalance. It's like having a therapist get in a relationship with a patient, or a teacher with a student. But can you talk about what happened with Lorianne Thompson?
So Lorianne Thompson is a Canadian woman, lives in Eastern Canada. And she was or Central Canada, I think. And she and her husband were Ravi fans for a while, and she established email contact with Ravi, and then he gave her his private BlackBerry messenger to communicate, and he admits this in his federal lawsuit. Here's my BlackBerry so we can have more secure communication. And it wasn't an affair because I made a mistake early on calling it an affair because it really was clerical abuse of a vulnerable woman who had come to him for spiritual help. But it got sexual online. There was never any physical contact between them, but it got sexual, and there were photographs and there was erotic talk. And I know from one good source that there was phone sex. And then Miss Thompson decided that her conscience was bothering her so much about this. She emailed Ravi one night, or she contacted him one night and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to tell my husband. And Ravi wrote back saying, if you do, that you promised you wouldn't. And if you do, I'm going to bid this world goodbye. So he's threatening suicide to keep a Christian woman who was in his spiritual care from taking necessary steps to heal her marriage. It was one of the most vicious things he did, was to put his reputation above her spiritual well-being, for someone who claims to be a Christian to do that. Anyway, he wound up suing her to keep her quiet, and then the lawsuit settled on confidentiality grounds, so she's never been able to talk about the case. She has talked about it a bit, but she's very hesitant about doing so.
Yeah, so they actually initially approached him. I think they wanted compensation, but then he sued in response, claiming that they were trying to extort him. And
that's right. Yeah.
The Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, basically the upper echelons, they basically believed Ravi, essentially.
I don't know who believed what, but I think that Ravi's ministry, the people there, believed that he was in the right and that she was an extortionist. And they believed that because, as they now admit, they believed that because Ravi was so charismatic and powerful in persuading them that it was true. It wasn't because Ravi had evidence. There were red flags everywhere. He didn't want them to see his phones, for instance. He became very angry when they pressed him about this. He also made a very false statement when he settled that lawsuit. I don't know if you guys remember, but in December of I think it's 2018. I'm suddenly not remembering. Ravi issued a press release after the lawsuit was settled, saying, I have long made it my policy not to be alone with a woman other than my wife and my daughters, not in a car, not in a restaurant, nowhere. But we now know that Ravi had his personal private traveling massage woman who would go with him to Bangkok and on his trips. So at that point, lots of people in his ministry now knew that the ministry was lying to cover up for Ravi, because they knew he was spending lots of time with this woman alone, and they were putting out to the world that he didn't hang out with women alone. Some of them also knew that Ravi Zacharias owned a spa in the Atlanta area where he would go in and spend time naked with women who weren't his wife or his daughter. So people believed him, but they had no reason to believe him. Other than his charisma and their self-interest in keeping his reputation untarnished.
Yeah, and I guess which in turn would keep their reputation untarnished too. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, a lot of these
was their
folks,
mindset anyway.
A lot of the people, in fact, most of the people in RZIM were just nice Christians, that many of them were very good scholars who just wanted to go about doing their evangelism and their apologetics and their scholarly work. And they didn't really make it a top priority to vet every accusation that people like me made against Ravi. So I respect that. I'm not saying that they all should have circled the wagons and demanded Ravi's resignation. But at some point, it was obvious to anyone who had eyes to see that Ravi was lying about everything, or about a lot of this stuff. And nobody came out against it publicly until after it was too late, after the spa story broke.
Yeah. And this is where we get the spa story, because this is when his reputation just fell to pieces. Yeah, I believe you had a major role in exposing the sexual abuse of spa workers by Ravi. Can you talk about what happened with the spa workers?
The spa story is the most exciting part of this whole Ravi Zacharias saga. Ravi, through his pitbull legal team, had been able to keep Lori Ann Thompson and Brad quiet. And he wound up navigating through the credential fraud and the Thompson lawsuit problem. And then he died and was lauded by Mike, Vice President Pence spoke, Tim Tebow spoke, all these people speaking in the most glowing terms about Ravi Zacharias. And really, the guy was on his way to becoming the next saint, pretty much. And a few days after that, I got an email from a woman saying Ravi was a sexual pervert, and she knows this because she worked in the spas with him. And I had a lot of contact with this woman, and her story, in my opinion, checked out. I believed her, but I didn't have enough evidence to break that. I did not want to just break that story based on one witness. So I held on to it. And then a few weeks after that, I got a call out of the blue from a guy named Anurag Sharma, telling me that he was a friend of Ravi's, and he called me. He wanted to discuss spiritual matters with me. And I spoke at great length one day to Mr. Sharma, and I just happened to ask him, do you know anything about Ravi being in the spa business, in the massage business? And Mr. Sharma said, I was in the massage business with Ravi. And he sent me some proof that he was in the massage business with Ravi. And he told me that one of the reasons Mr. Sharma, closed down the spa that they were working with together was because of the way Ravi was treating the women. So at this point, I had what I needed to go public with the story. And then the Christian media did a really good job. The Christian media, which had done a horrible job on Ravi's stuff up until then, they did a really good job, and they found a bunch more women. I was able to interview 2 of them, and then Mr. Sharma, but they went and found quite a few more. And that's what really brought Ravi down, was the spa story.
Yeah.
So what did he do to these women?
I don't know. The stories go anywhere from one of them said that he raped her. One of the women I talked to told me that he wanted his penis massaged by her. And another told me that she was sexually involved with him in the spas. So, I don't know the level of abuse. We also know that Ravi brought women from Thailand and India to work in spas. And there's a hugely unequal power balance there. As Matthew's pointing out with clerics, if you're the boss of the spa and you've got someone's visa in your hands, because he's your employee that you brought over from Thailand, you can get away with a lot in that relationship that you might not be able to get away with someone who's got equal bargaining power. So Ravi clearly abused his power over his employees in the spa.
Jeez. Yeah. What a scumbag.
Yeah. So, but then the Christianity Today magazine breaks the story, or you broke the story, but so Christianity Today magazine does this major investigation. So does Word magazine, I think is the title. Then RZIM hire a law firm, Miller and Martin, to look into these allegations, and the report that Miller and Martin ends up releasing is damning. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, to their credit, RZIM, which was then run by his daughter, Sarah, they commissioned after I published my SPA findings. I'd written to them a couple of days before I published the findings, saying, "Hey, I'm about to go public with this. Let me know if I have my facts wrong." And they didn't let me know, so I went and published. That set off a scramble at RZIM, and they wound up hiring a law firm who did a very thorough investigation and found out all sorts of really bad stuff that Ravi had been up to, in terms of sexual stuff and in terms of his involvement in the massage business. He was spending lots of time in the sex capital of the world, Bangkok. So that there were some sordid details in the Miller report, and his ministry, most of them, to their credit, came out and said, we think that report is accurate. So that was good of them. I don't know what choice they had, but it was good of them.
And then there was an organization called Guidepost that were audited to look at RZIM's conduct around Ravi. Are you aware of that situation?
Yeah. Guidepost did a cultural study of RZIM to figure out what went wrong. I don't know that you need to commission an agency to do that. It was obvious that people were scared of Ravi. They had no independent checks on him. The board was just the rubber stamp for Ravi. So he was able to do exactly what he wanted, and nobody questioned him. It was very, very cult-like. And that's now clear. We now have his employees speaking out about how difficult it was to disagree with Ravi, even if you were a high up person in the ministry.
Yeah, it's interesting you say cult-like. Yeah, I never thought about this, but could it be correct to call him a cult leader? You mentioned earlier that if you spoke out against him or within RZIM, he were, quote, sent to Siberia, end quote. But that he was a very charismatic figure, that he was able to get away with this stuff. Would you say that he ran a cult?
I'm using the word cult broadly. I know there are scholarly definitions of it. A high intensity organization where unquestioned devotion towards the leader is demanded, and severe sanctions are meted out for criticizing or going against the leader. That's what I'm calling a cult here. And that clearly is what was happening. That describes RZIM very clearly, very well.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like the definition of cult to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So one thing I forgot to ask about earlier, in your book, you describe there's a startling letter that you received.
While you're looking, Matthew, the one of the things that I hope someone does an academic paper on is look at the quality of comments from the people who defended Ravi on social media. They were almost all nasty and dumb. And the record speaks for itself. If you go to my YouTube channel, and you can read hundreds of comments from Ravi defenders, utterly clueless people who had no interest in critically thinking through the issues. And they were passionate followers of a man whose slogan was, "Let my people think." So it's very, very ironic, and very revealing about what, we talk about whether Ravi Zacharias did good things for his followers. He did not teach them how to articulate and think critically. And you check the comments out in social media, and they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So actually, I've got your Kindle. I've got my in front of me now on my Kindle. There's a chapter in it called "Ravi's Enablers at God Incorporated," or the people that enabled him. And there's Dr. Richard Land, Southern Evangelical Cemetery, and the Christian Post. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yes.
Can you talk about what happened there?
I don't remember what I wrote in the book about that. I mean, Richard Land was a big promoter of Ravi even after the scandals were coming out. But I don't remember specifically what you're referring to.
Oh, here's a letter that I mentioned from a woman called Miss Hamilton.
Yeah.
You know the letter I'm talking about now?
Yeah, I remember Deborah Hamilton. I don't have the book in front of me, but I don't remember that being all that explosive, Matthew. I mean, that was just an example of another Christian group blindly following Ravi and covering up for him and giving him speaking engagements after they really should have known that he was a deceptive man. But I'm sorry, I'm not remembering anything special about that. Lots of Christian organizations were doing that.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first read that part of the book, I was astounded what she was saying. You talked also. I'll just go to this next bit. When a guy got pretty much thrown out of a conference or blocked from asking a question that Ravi was going to speak at.
Yeah, so that's interesting you're asking about that, because that's one part of the book that I now think I did not get my facts right. It wasn't my fault. It's that nobody spoke to me, so I just went with the evidence that I had. But the basic idea is a Baptist historian and archivist and a devoted Baptist gentleman named Jim Lutzweiler he was one of the first Christians to contact me and express concern about Ravi. Jim was very upset, and he saw through Ravi after being a loyal follower for many years, and Jim's wife also being a loyal follower. But after Ravi's lawsuit settled in December of 2017, within 6 weeks, a Baptist megachurch in Jacksonville, Florida, was going to give Ravi a prestigious lifetime ministry award. And Jim wanted to go to that and stand up and ask a question of the pastor as to why they're giving a lifetime ministry award to Ravi Zacharias in light of all these horrible things that are coming out. And he was removed from the church. Okay, so we know that they removed him from the church, but there are questions about why they removed him from the church. I spoke to one of the pastors there who said we kicked him out for security reasons, and I haven't been able to figure out what happened, but I think that there are two sides to that issue that I didn't see when I described it in the book. Again, it wasn't my fault. It's that those guys didn't respond to my requests to hear their side of the story. So I just went with what I could put together, and it wasn't complete.
Okay. Given what you just said, also given that since your book was published, the spa abuse scandal came out, would you consider revising your book and updating it and releasing it again?
Probably not. I'm sort of done with Ravi stuff. I made my point, and it's up to the Christian community to learn from it or not learn from it. I don't know what else I can do.
Yeah. So what do you think is the ultimate lesson for the Ravi scandal? The fact that he was able to get away with credential fraud and sexual abuse, and the fact that so many people enabled it. What's the ultimate lesson here? Do you believe?
That's a good question.
There's several of them. One for me, as someone who grew up being always skeptical about religion, even during my years of born again Christianity, even when I left the religion, I had nothing but respect for the Southern Baptist Church, or the Southern Baptist denomination, and evangelical Christians. And the Ravi thing really made me cynical about that. I no longer think Christian organizations will be any more ethical or moral than tobacco companies or pharmaceutical companies. They have their organizational inertia that compels them to set aside inconvenient things like scandals and to set aside truth if it's going to get in the way of their business model. So lesson number one for me is Christian organizations are no more trustworthy than anybody else. which was a wake-up call for me.
Mm.
I'm not saying other people think that, but that also the second big lesson for me was the power of charismatic figures to get people to set their brains on the shelf and go with the slogans and go with the program, even when it's prima facie questionable. People don't want to hear stuff that isn't going to enhance their warm fuzzy. And we're all that way, you know, but the power of charisma and the willingness of people to be stupid and mean in pursuit of their religious or whatever their passion is. It's kind of depressing. Facts don't matter that much when passion's involved.
Yeah.
So the people who in the what you've called Christian Incorporated, I think in the past, the people in the evangelical organizations, do you think they were to turn a blind eye to Ravi's behavior? Do you reckon they were motivated by finances, money, or do you reckon they were motivated by what they considered the greater good of spreading the word of God?
I'm pretty sure that most people at RZIM were motivated by sincere passion for the religion, but they also benefited from honor. They were honored it was very prestigious to be on Ravi's preaching staff, and they allowed that to cloud their vision. So they were passionate about the religion, they were passionate about their scholarship, and they also allowed the benefits of their position to blur their vision and to turn a blind eye to a lot of things that they now wish they had not turned a blind eye to. But yeah, I don't think there were any people or many people at RZIM who were just wanton cynics who say, we just are doing this for the money. Ravi may have been. Ravi's wife may have been. I don't know, but I don't think the others were.
Think of gets me about clerics who commit sex crimes, and you hear about this a lot. But I think, how could they possibly reconcile their religion with what they're doing? When we hear about priests molesting children, and also what Ravi did, how do they? Wouldn't they be afraid of what's going to happen to them in the afterlife, given what they've done? How do they possibly reconcile what their behavior with their religion? I don't get it.
I think there are certain personality types, narcissist personality disorder. I would not be surprised if Ravi honestly believed that he was so important to God's mission, so important to the kingdom of God, that God gave him special dispensation. A little bit of sexual hanky-panky here and there was his reward for spending so many hours on the road in service of the Lord. I mean, people get that way. Religious leaders get that way. Yeah, it contradicts the religion, but it only contradicts the religion as it applies to the masses. It doesn't necessarily contradict the religion as it applies to the high priest who's getting instructions directly from God, or may feel.
Why does it contradict the religion? Why does it contradict the religion?
Yeah, because adultery is prohibited in Christianity.
Oh,
so
okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, adultery,
So,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Adultery, specifically adultery, yes.
Yeah.
And there is something about, I think Jesus said about, it's better for someone to have a millstone around their neck and thrown into water than it is for a child to be harmed, or something to that effect.
Another one, in addition to adultery, Kayleen, lying. I mean, Ravi was clearly lying about his credentials, and he may very well have thought, this helps the kingdom of God for people to believe that I have Cambridge qualifications, you know. And he was right. It helped him sell books. It helped him get his message out. It helped Christianity increase its numbers. But it was against the religion because it forbids lying, and Ravi was clearly lying about his credentials. So
I'm wondering if the people turning a blind eye to his academic credentials just gave him more and more confidence, be more and more brazen, which eventually enabled him in his mind to be able to do the sex abuse stuff.
I've speculated about that. Yeah, I mean, if his colleagues early on, when he was a brand new evangelist, said, "Hey, Ravi, we don't do what you're doing. You and if Ravi's denomination, the Christian Missionary Alliance, had followed their own protocols, and Ravi would have had to have someone who he reports to as a spiritual superior, if they'd cared about that and told Ravi, you can't get away misleading your credentials like this, he probably wouldn't have felt so brazen that he felt. I mean, he really felt untouchable. I mean, he was able to open a spa right near his evangelical headquarters and go in and have sexual activity with the women there. He clearly felt that he could get away with everything, and he was pretty much right.
Yeah.
They gave him a pass.
So I think I've covered everything that I've asked. I'm wondering if Gia and Clark have got any questions or anything they'd like to say.
Yeah, no specific questions. Yeah, I was just kind of happy to chime in with my thoughts. What about you, Gia? I think Gia seems to be on mute at the moment. At least her microphone is. I can see like a cross through it on the.
Carleen's been muted for some reason.
Okay. I think she may have just shook her head and said no. She doesn't have anything further. But
okay. Is there anything you'd like to add, Steve, before we end this?
If you're cynical about religious organizations, Ravi Zacharias has given you good reason to be.
Yeah. But the great irony of this is, if someone covers up for someone in an organization or to protect the organization, the reputation of the organization, that is, well, the cover up, when it gets exposed, just ruins the reputation of the organization. It actually makes more sense. If even from a purely practical standpoint of protecting the organization's reputation, deal with the actual problem. Don't cover it up. Otherwise, it backfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about is I think that there's a very high chance that RZIM was engaged in human trafficking, because we know that Ravi brought women in from Thailand and India to work in his spa. I'm an immigration lawyer, and I don't know how that could have been done without bringing them in on student visas or tourist visas or on religious worker visas, and then having them work in the spas. So I strongly suspect that Ravi's ministry engaged in immigration fraud to bring these women over from Asia to work in his spas. And that's a subject that nobody seems to be touching with a 10-foot pole. And I keep saying someone should look into that, but it could be that there are people around who signed fraudulent immigration papers and they don't want anybody opening that issue. I mean, think about it. They had women working in the spas, probably on student or tourist visas, or again, religious workers visas. And then they were working in the spas on Ravi and probably on other clients. That's a very troubling and explosive issue that isn't being discussed here. No one is talking about it. So
human trafficking is in slave labor, is that what you're saying?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't say slave labor. Right? They are probably paying the women, but in terms of bringing women for sexual purposes, yeah.
It's just the worst of the worst, really, human trafficking. That's just a really sad story, you know, like, yeah.
Well, and immigration fraud, yeah. So I'm
very disgusting.
I think it's very likely that there was a good bit of that there, and I don't know that we're ever going to see any reporting on it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Gia, do you have any more questions or anything you'd like to say?
Okay, I muted myself. No, not really now. Okay. Are you? Yeah. not. I mean, a lot. But we'll make more episodes, and I think a lot of things will get clearer in time. But yeah, I'm very grateful to
like.
Steve for
Yeah.
taking part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you so much, Steve. This was really, really good.
There's still
Great
a lot
honor.
of Ravi. There's still a lot of Ravi Zacharias fans out there.
Yeah.
Especially in Africa, I'm noticing that a large percentage of the people who are defending Ravi on social media are from Africa. And I don't know how to explain that, but the guy, he still has a significant following out there. And that's a very disturbing thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, his
Well,
conduct
if
doesn't go on. Hang on. All right, you, Gia?
I personally believe that if people need something, they should go for it if it helps them. But yeah, definitely, they need to know the whole truth. They need to know about the allegations and everything. They need to know about his identity and all the things around it, in my opinion. So
Everything has two sides or multiple sides. I guess.
Maybe they like his message. I mean, like his conduct doesn't negate his apologetics arguments. I mean, his arguments are either true or false. His arguments are either valid or invalid. But maybe they feel like they got something out of him, and they're willing to put aside his conduct, or they just don't believe what he.
Well, so this is a really big issue. As we've talked about, I don't think Ravi. It would be like me telling my 6-year-old kid. I don't have a 6-year-old kid, but let's just say I have a 6-year-old kid, and he comes back from his first day at school and the bullies were beating him up. And he comes to me and says, I don't want to go back to school. And I give my 6-year-old boy a magic penny. And I say, just put this magic penny in your pocket and it will keep the bullies away. And my 6-year-old boy then sleeps really well that night and goes off to school the next morning feeling really happy and safe because he has that magic penny in his pocket. Have I really done any favors for my 6-year-old boy? No, I've told him a stupid, superstitious story that he's eventually going to find out is false, right? And that's what Ravi has done for millions of people. I'm not saying it's a stupid, suspicious story. I'm saying the story that Ravi told is stupid, superstitious. He was not bringing out the best in Christian philosophy. He was not encouraging people to think. He presented atheism as a one-dimensional thing that only evil people would buy onto. So I just don't think that he was helping people by doing that. There are Christians who are helping. William Lane Craig deals as a great Christian apologist. He helps Christians deal with the deep intellectual issues. Ravi didn't.
Yeah. So he wasn't really good at what he was actually famous for, was it?
No, he was good at manipulating. He was good at the charisma. He was really good at that. But he wasn't a good Christian apologist.
Yeah, plenty of people out there. Like plenty of people out there who aren't good at what they're famous for.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us as well. Like I said, I hope my brother-in-law's voice doesn't come out into the recordings. If it does, we might have to do this over again. But
no, we can't hear anything. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for allowing me to do a second interview with you, Steve. I remember I did the original one before when I was going to be a documentary film, but then when I decided podcast, and these two Gia and Clark got involved, I thought it'd be better to do a second interview with all of us doing this. Thanks for doing this. Do you still do RaviWatch.com?
No, I let it expire just a few months ago. I'm really kind of done with Ravi stuff. I don't feel I have anything more to say about it. If people ask me for interviews like this, I grant them, I do them, but the website's no longer needed. So, and thank you, Gio, for setting up the logistics. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
For organizing this.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was really good to talk to each other around the world, and me and Matt in Australia, Macedonia, Gia, and Steve
in California.
Uniting 3 continents.
California.
So thanks for this. Yeah, so I'll sign off now. Like I said, I can hear throughout this interview, I could hear my brother-in-law on the other side of the house. I'm hoping he doesn't come back in the recording. But
See you guys then. Thanks again.
see you guys later. Thanks.
See you down the road. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.